Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about progressive overload versus our training intensity. So this is something I frequently get from clients, I frequently get from followers who will talk to me about this, and they'll ask me, it's like if I'm progressing, then I'm stimulating growth, right? And it really isn't quite as straightforward as that. And let me clarify that a little bit. I mean, you're in the right direction, but here's the thing. If you are pushing your work sets hard, you are getting them very, very close to failure, or you are hitting failure. Right, so like watch this squat set here. This squat set, I had about 0 reps in reserve. My last rep, a little slow, form was starting to degrade. That was again 0 reps in reserve, because had I gone for one more, form would have broke down really bad and it would have been ugly. And that's not what we want on a big movement. Right, we do not want that on a big barbell exercise. Okay, so when we look at it from that perspective, we go, okay, that was a hard set. Okay, if we train like that, we are going to stimulate muscle growth, irrespective of where your training volumes themselves are. A set of squats like that, set of deadlifts like I'm doing here, hard sets like this, taking close to that bleeding edge, they are always going to stimulate growth. Of course, you'll see me doing some of my basic exercises through this video: squat, bench, deadlift, weighted pull-ups, tricep extensions. I actually treat my arm work the same way these days, because my arms need to grow. They are my weakest link. I tend to treat extensions and curls just like these big movements, right? I push them to the limit. I want to see progressive overload. I want to see really high quality sets, and I push them hard. Okay. So when we're training in that manner, we know that we are stimulating muscle growth. So people say, well, what about the progressive overload? So why do, for novices, we always program those progressions and try to add weight every week till form breaks or we miss reps? And it's because with novices, those sets don't need to always be limit sets. They just need to be close. And that general increase will ensure that they're training hard. Okay? That's it. It is just making sure that they're training hard. Because even if they start fairly easy, if they keep adding weight, it's going to get hard. And then when it gets really hard and they can't do it, you let them back off. That's it. We're just making sure that they're doing hard sets. Because if you don't, a novice lifter, and I've seen this for years and years in the gym, it's something I noticed 25 years ago. There are people who will go to the gym who are like, yeah, I've been working out 10 years, and they use the same weight for their squats and their bench and everything. And you watch them, and it's like I saw a guy who did that early on. The only thing he trained really hard was his arms. And all things considered, for a guy who was about, 160, 170 pounds, he had great biceps. Man, the guy pushed preacher curls crazy hard all the time and all his arm work. But, I used to watch him, and he would just put one plate per side on the bar. He would squat and bench all his work sets with exactly one plate for sets of 10. You just go through the motions, And obviously then accordingly, he didn't have particularly impressive legs or particularly impressive chest. But man, he had arms. Because then you'd watch him do all his arm work, and the guy would, he would go all out. And he would always try to pursue strength. The guy actually could move some pretty good weight on a preacher curl even. But I used to see that, but he never made progress, obviously, because he didn't push. And I asked him that, he said, I've never really tried to go heavier than that on a squat. Because, it feels good, and I'm getting a good pump in my legs. And so he just stayed with, 135 for 3 sets of 10 for like a decade. It's like, okay. But you see the point. He's obviously not going to grow from that. Novices will do that unless you force them to. For people who are beyond that and they're willing to push, it's different. The hard sets themselves stimulate growth. The progress tells us where we are. You didn't get bigger because you picked up another rep or two. Okay? That's not what made you grow. So, or let's say, you see me doing this 8 rep set here with 375. What happens when I take that up 20 pounds? Or what happens when I get back to 405 for 8. I will be bigger. Why? Because the growth itself is what allows the progression. Okay? And that's where it gets confused with the novice. Because we force that progression, that it gives the idea that adding that 5 pounds is what stimulates the growth. No, it's only stimulating the growth if the sets are hard. Okay? Does that make sense? It's the other way around. We're adding the weight to make the sets harder. Because otherwise, if they're doing, say, sets of 5 on the squat, if we don't ever add weight, it's not going to get harder. It's going to get easier, and then they'll stop growing. It is the hard sets. Okay? It's the hard sets that stimulate growth. The progression is what happens after you grow. Okay? The ability to progress. If you were doing sets with 3 reps in reserve, yes, adding 5 pounds is different. Of course, because if you keep adding 5 pounds, it's no longer going to be 3 reps in reserve. It's going to turn into 1 rep in reserve or 0 real quick. See where we're going? That is when it matters. But if we're taking the sets to limit sets, so you've only got 0 or 1 rep in the tank, or you hit failure, those sets are hard. That stimulates muscle growth, right? The hard sets are what stimulate the most growth. And I'm not saying you have to do that to stimulate growth. What I'm saying is that on a set-for-set basis, that will stimulate the most growth, right? Taking a set to 0 reps in reserve will cause more growth than a set with 3 reps in reserve. Irrespective of what weight is on the bar. So again, our ability to continue to replicate performance while adding weight is evidence that we got bigger. Because if your 8 rep max is 300 pounds, until you get bigger, you will not be able to do 8 reps with 310. You just won't be able to do it. You'll get 7 reps or 6 or whatever. Okay, do we understand? If your 8 rep max is 300 pounds, you will not be able to get 9 reps or 10 reps until you get bigger. The progression is what happens. Your ability to progress, if you were already doing limit sets, is a product of hypertrophy largely. Okay? It's the biggest factor. So look at it from that perspective. Yes, progressive overload is extremely important. But it is the difficulty of the work and the fatigue you are creating and the tension created on the muscle fibers through that fatigue that is stimulating the adaptation. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.